What if the tomato plants sitting in your garden right now were capable of producing twice the fruit, and you were unknowingly doing 3 things every single week that were stopping them? Not because you're a bad gardener, because 4 specific techniques that dramatically increase tomato yields were quietly removed from mainstream gardening advice over the past 80 years. Not because they stopped working, because they worked so well on their own that they made certain products unnecessary. This is not conspiracy. This is history. And by the end of this video, you're going to have 4 concrete, immediately actionable techniques, all of them proven, all of them free, that will change how you grow tomatoes from this season forward. Welcome to Evergreen Grounds, where we dig up the growing knowledge that time almost buried. If this is your first time here and you care about growing more food with less money and less work, subscribe right now and hit the notification bell. Every week on this channel, we uncover techniques with roots going back decades, sometimes centuries, backed by both traditional wisdom and modern science. Here's what we are covering today. 4 techniques that old farmers used routinely. 4 techniques that produced extraordinary results. 4 techniques that were either erased, ridiculed, or quietly abandoned as gardening became more commercial, and all 4 of which you can implement in your garden this weekend. Stay until the end, because the 4th secret is the one that will genuinely surprise you. It is the practice modern gardeners abandoned most recently. It was removed from popular advice within living memory, and the science explaining why it worked has only been fully understood in the last decade. Leave early, and you will miss the single most actionable insight in this entire video. Let's start with the one that will immediately change what you do the next time you walk out to your tomato plant. Secret number 1. The forgotten pruning method. Go to almost any gardening forum, any mainstream growing guide, and you will find the same advice repeated endlessly. Let your tomato plants grow. More leaves equals more photosynthesis equals more fruit. It sounds logical. It is also, for most gardeners growing indeterminate varieties, significantly wrong. Old farmers, particularly in Southern Europe, where tomato growing was refined over centuries before it became industrialized, practiced what they called single-stem training, or what Italian gardeners called the 1-liter method. Every side shoot that emerged from the junction between a stem and a leaf, every sucker, in modern language, was removed within days of appearing, leaving a single strong central stem with maximum energy flowing from root to fruit. The logic is not complicated once you understand what a tomato plant is actually trying to do. Left unpruned, an indeterminate tomato splits its energy in every direction simultaneously. Dozens of growing tips, hundreds of leaves, sprawling lateral branches, all competing for the same pool of resources. The roots are pulling from the soil. The plant is impressive. The fruit is disappointing, smaller, slower to ripen, fewer than the plant is genuinely capable of producing. Remove the competition. 1 stem. All of that root energy traveling in one direction, up a single pathway, directly into the fruit clusters. Old farmers reported ripening times shortening by 2 weeks. Modern trials confirm it. Fewer tomatoes per cluster in early season, significantly more fruit per season overall, ripening faster, sizing larger, with less disease because air circulation around a single stem plant is dramatically superior to a sprawling bush. This method was not abandoned because it stopped working. It was abandoned because it requires walking through the garden twice a week with attention and intention. And that is exactly the kind of practice that does not sell products or generate return purchases. Evergreen Grounds tip. Remove suckers when they are under 2 inches, small enough to pinch off cleanly with your fingers, leaving no wound for disease to enter. Once a sucker reaches 4+ inches, cut cleanly with sterilized scissors rather than tearing. For the main leader, tie to a stake every 8 to 10 inches as it climbs. One plant, one stem, maximum fruit. Secret number 2. Why old farmers buried fish beneath their tomatoes. The first Europeans to encounter Native American agriculture in the Northeast documented something that confused them entirely. Before planting, native farmers would place a small fish, often a herring or alewife, directly in the planting hole beneath each crop. The Europeans thought it was a ritual. Agricultural historians spent decades debating it. Modern soil scientists have spent the last 30 years proving it was one of the most sophisticated fertilization techniques ever developed. Here's what is happening beneath the soil. A fish buried 6 to 8 inches under a transplant begins breaking down within days, releasing a cascade of nutrients into the root zone. Nitrogen from protein decomposition, phosphorus from bone material, calcium from scales, trace minerals, and omega fatty acids that feed soil microbial communities in ways that synthetic fertilizers simply cannot replicate. And critically, the release is slow, timed almost perfectly to the tomato plant's root development schedule. By the time the roots reach the fish material, 2 to 3 weeks after planting, the breakdown is producing peak nutrient availability. Modern research from multiple agricultural universities has confirmed that phosphorus availability from buried fish material matches or exceeds commercial phosphorus fertilizers in tomato production trials. The difference: buried fish also builds soil biology. Commercial fertilizers feed the plant, buried fish feed the plant, and the entire microbial ecosystem beneath it. The mycorrhizal networks, the bacterial communities, the soil life that improves your growing conditions permanently. You do not need a whole fish. A handful of dried fish meal, a few fish scraps from your kitchen, or a small amount of canned fish worked into the planting hole 6 to 8 inches below the transplant. That is the entire technique, free, ancient, confirmed by modern science, and almost completely absent from every gardening guide published in the last 50 years. Evergreen Grounds tip: fish meal from any garden center works perfectly. Use roughly 2 tablespoons worked into the bottom of the planting hole, covered with 2 inches of soil before setting the transplant. If using kitchen scraps, bury them at least 8 inches deep to avoid attracting animals. Do not use fish sauce or canned fish in brine. The salt content will damage roots. Plain, unseasoned fish material only. Secret number 3. Ancient companion planting combinations that act as a free, self-running pest and pollinator system. Companion planting is one of those practices that modern gardening magazines treat as folksy and optional. Something nice to try if you have extra space, not a core strategy that changes what your tomatoes actually produce. Old farmers who practiced it seriously did not see it that way at all. The combination that has the most documented effect on tomato production involves 3 specific plants grown in deliberate proximity: basil, borage, and marigold, not scattered randomly, placed with purpose. Basil, planted at 1/8-inch intervals along the tomato bed, releases volatile compounds, specifically linalool and eugenol, that demonstrably confuse and repel aphids, whiteflies, and tomato hornworm moths. The moths that lay hornworm eggs navigate to tomato plants primarily through scent. Basil's chemistry disrupts that navigation. Fewer eggs laid means fewer hornworms. This is not anecdote. Research from agricultural universities across 3 continents has replicated it. Borage, the blue-starred, slightly bristly herb that most Western gardeners have never grown, is the piece of this combination that changes the pollination equation entirely. Borage flowers are among the most efficient attractors of bumblebees known. Bumblebees are dramatically more effective tomato pollinators than honeybees because their wing vibration frequency matches the frequency that releases tomato pollen, a process called buzz pollination. More bumblebees in your tomato bed means more complete pollination, larger fruit set, fewer hollow or misshapen tomatoes. Marigolds, specifically Tagetes patula, French marigold, release compounds from their roots that suppress soil nematodes, one of the most common invisible causes of poor tomato performance. Plant once around the perimeter, let them bloom, and they are working at both the root and aerial level simultaneously. 3 plants, 3 completely different mechanisms, 1 free permanent defense and productivity system that requires no spraying, no maintenance, and no repeat purchases. Evergreen grounds tip. The full combination for maximum effect. Basil every 18 inches along the bed interior, borage at the corners and ends of each bed, French marigold in a continuous border around the outside. Plant all 3 at the same time as your tomato transplants. The Evergreen Grounds planting guide in the bio includes a full companion planting chart showing precise spacing for this combination with different bed sizes. Secret number 4. The practice modern gardeners abandoned that provably increased yields. Deep watering, not frequent watering. Deep watering, slow, infrequent, deliberate soaking of the root zone to a depth of 12 to 18 inches, practiced once or twice a week rather than light surface watering every day. Old farmers, without irrigation systems, watered tomatoes the way rain actually works, infrequently, thoroughly, all the way down. The result was a root system that followed the water deep into the soil, developing the extensive, deep architecture that gives a tomato plant access to moisture and nutrients across a much larger soil volume than a shallow-rooted plant can reach. Modern gardening advice shifted toward frequent, light watering for one reason. It is easier to automate, easier to sell timers and drip systems for, and it produces plants that look healthy in the short term. What it actually produces is shallow root systems that are dependent on constant surface moisture, sensitive to any disruption in watering frequency, and far less productive than they would be with deep, infrequent irrigation. University of California Cooperative Extension Trials, comparing daily shallow watering versus twice-weekly deep watering on identical tomato varieties, found that deep-watered plants produced 23% more fruit and showed significantly lower rates of blossom end rot. The calcium deficiency condition, caused not by lack of calcium in the soil, but by inconsistent water uptake, disrupting calcium transport. When you water deeply and infrequently, the root system dives. When the root system dives, the plant becomes genuinely drought resilient, accesses a far larger pool of soil nutrients, and produces fruit with dramatically more consistent development. The technique requires nothing, no products, no equipment beyond what you already have. Just the patience to water thoroughly twice a week instead of lightly every day. Evergreen grounds tip. Water deeply using a slow trickle at the base of the plant for 20 to 30 minutes per plant, or flood the bed slowly and allow full absorption. Wait until the top 2 inches of soil are dry before watering again, usually 3 to 5 days in summer. Use a stick or skewer pushed 6 inches into the soil to check moisture depth before each session. Mulch heavily around the base to reduce surface evaporation between waterings. 4 techniques, all of them free, all of them proven, all of them available to you starting this weekend. Single stem pruning, to concentrate every ounce of root energy directly into fruit. Buried fish material, to feed your plants and build your soil simultaneously. The basil, borage, and marigold combination to run pest control and pollination for free all season. And deep, infrequent watering to build a root architecture that makes everything else work at maximum capacity. None of these require a single purchase. None of them require specialized equipment. They require knowledge, and now you have it. The full companion planting charts, bed layout diagrams, and step-by-step planting calendar for everything covered today are in the Evergreen Grounds Planting Guide, linked in the bio. If you want to implement all 4 of these techniques correctly from day 1, that guide gives you the exact measurements, timing, and variety recommendations for every growing zone. Hit the thumbs up. If this changed how you are thinking about your tomatoes this season, it genuinely helps Evergreen Grounds reach the gardeners who need this information. Subscribe and turn on notifications for new growing secrets every single week. And drop a comment right now telling me which of these 4 techniques you are trying first. I read every single one. See you in the next video.